There's a guy who fixes HVAC systems for a living. He drives a truck that's 8 years old and dented on one side. His lunch most days is something packed from home. He doesn't talk about money at parties. Nobody asks him about it either. And yet, his net worth quietly crossed $1 million sometime last year. He doesn't know the exact date. He wasn't watching. This is happening more often than most people realize. Not in a viral, aspirational, here's my portfolio kind of way. Quietly, without announcement, without a brand. The people we assume are wealthy often aren't, and the people we overlook often are. That gap between what wealth looks like and what it actually is has been widening for a while. It's worth understanding why, because it changes how you think about money entirely. Most of us grew up with a pretty visual definition of wealth. Nice car, big house, upgraded everything, constant travel. That image got reinforced by every ad, every status signal, every aspirational Instagram grid. So we learned, almost by osmosis, to equate spending with financial success. The person buying the expensive thing must be doing well. The person not buying it probably can't afford to. That assumption is wrong more often than people admit. And it's not a small error. It's the kind of mistake that quietly shapes financial behavior for decades. Because if you believe wealth looks a certain way, you start building toward the look, not the thing itself. A decent chunk of consumer debt in this country exists partly for that reason. Not just need, not just want, status maintenance, appearance upkeep. The irony is that the people doing this are often not wealthy. And the people not doing this, the quiet ones, the boring spenders, sometimes are. There's a concept that runs through a lot of personal finance research. It's the gap between income and wealth. They are not the same thing, and confusing them is expensive. Income is what comes in. Wealth is what stays. A household earning $200,000 a year can have near zero net worth. A household earning $70,000 can quietly build something significant over time. The mechanism is simple, but most people don't feel it until much later. Every dollar that doesn't leave becomes a dollar that can work. That's not motivational language, that's just arithmetic. The invisible millionaire isn't usually a secret genius or a lucky stock picker. In a lot of cases, they're just someone who stopped performing wealth. They made a quiet internal decision, at some point, to detach their spending from their identity. That's harder than it sounds in a culture that monetizes your insecurity constantly. But the people who manage it tend to accumulate in ways that aren't visible from the outside, which is almost the whole point. The wealth that gets celebrated publicly is usually the most fragile kind. High income, high spending, high exposure, it looks impressive and it often is precarious. A job loss, a health event, a market shift, and the whole structure needs renegotiating. The invisible millionaire has usually built something with more insulation. Not because they earned more, often because they kept more of what they earned. There's a trade-off buried in here that almost nobody talks about honestly. Living below your means isn't free. It costs something real. It costs social friction, explaining why you didn't upgrade. It costs the quiet discomfort of watching people around you spend in ways you've chosen not to. It costs the occasional doubt. Am I being too cautious, too boring, too behind? That internal tension is real, and most finance content just skips past it entirely. But the people who stay with it, who tolerate that friction for years, tend to end up in a different position. Not always. Outcomes vary. Life is not a spreadsheet, but the pattern shows up consistently enough to be worth taking seriously. Now here's where the story gets a little more specific. A lot of invisible wealth isn't built through dramatic moves. It's built through compounding, which is the least dramatic thing in finance. You put something in, it earns something small. That small amount earns something too. Over time, the number stops looking small. But the process never stops looking boring. The reason most people don't benefit from this isn't ignorance. Most people have heard of compound interest. Most people nod when it's explained. The gap is time and consistency, both of which require tolerating a long period of nothing visible happening. That's where a lot of plans quietly fall apart, not in a dramatic way, just a gradual drift. An interruption here, a withdrawal there. A pause that becomes permanent. The invisible millionaire, in general terms, didn't find a better investment. They just didn't stop. For a long time, even when it felt pointless. Even during the years where the account balance felt almost insultingly small. There's something worth noticing about where invisible wealth tends to concentrate. It's often in trades, small business ownership, mid-level government work, agriculture, or long tenure employment. Not glamorous, not quotable, not the kind of career that gets profiled anywhere. But these paths often come with something that higher earning, higher profile careers don't always offer. Stability, predictability, lower lifestyle inflation pressure from peers. When your coworkers aren't buying boats, you don't feel behind for not buying one. The social environment around money matters more than most financial advice acknowledges. Your reference group quietly sets your spending ceiling. If everyone around you is leveraging their income to maintain a certain image, you feel it. If everyone around you is quietly indifferent to that, you feel that too. Neither pressure announces itself. Both shape behavior. One more thing that tends to separate invisible wealth from its flashier cousin: debt relationship. Specifically, what kind of debt and how much of it. High net worth individuals, not the loud ones, the quiet ones, tend to use debt differently. Not avoid it entirely, used deliberately, structurally, with a clear exit. Not swiped casually, not rolled over, not used to smooth a lifestyle gap. Consumer debts, the kind that funds spending rather than assets, tends to be minimal or absent. That's not a moral statement, it's a math one. Carrying high interest balances while trying to build wealth is like filling a bucket with a hole in the bottom. The numbers can still work in theory. In practice, the drag compounds against you. So what does this actually mean for someone watching this right now? Not someone already sitting on $1 million. Someone in the middle of it. Paycheck coming in, bills going out, a savings balance that feels almost embarrassing to look at. The honest answer is that invisible wealth doesn't start with a number. It starts with a quiet internal reframe about what money is actually for. Not for signaling, not for keeping up, not for making the month feel more comfortable than it is. For a lot of people, that reframe never happens because nobody around them is modeling it. The people doing it quietly aren't posting about it. They're not building a brand around their discipline. They're just living in a house that's slightly smaller than they could technically afford, driving something paid off, skipping the upgrade cycle. Not because they're punishing themselves, because they made a decision about what matters more. That decision looks different for everyone. The income level doesn't have to be extraordinary. What tends to matter more is the gap between what comes in and what stays. Even a modest, consistent gap, protected over time, tends to build something real. Not fast, not exciting, not worth a YouTube thumbnail in real time, but real. There's a misconception worth naming directly before this ends. A lot of people assume invisible millionaires got lucky, inheritance, property timing, a windfall. And sometimes that's true. Luck and timing are real variables and pretending otherwise is dishonest. But a significant portion of invisible wealth is just patience that outlasted impatience. Staying in the market when leaving felt more rational. Not refinancing lifestyle upward every time income increased. Letting boring accounts do boring things for a long time. The financial system is set up to make that hard. Every product, every platform, every upgrade cycle is designed to intercept that gap before it compounds. Subscription renewals, credit limit increases, buy now, pay later at checkout. The friction runs in one direction, toward spending, toward borrowing, toward consuming now. Building quietly requires running against that current. Not dramatically, just steadily. One practical thing worth actually considering. Not advice, just a frame that a lot of quietly wealthy people seem to operate with. They treat savings and investment contributions like a fixed cost, not a leftover. Not what's left after everything else, the first line on the budget, not the last. That single behavioral shift changes the math over time in ways that are hard to overstate. Because if you wait to see what's left, in most modern spending environments, there's rarely much left. The system is efficient at filling available money with available spending. The only reliable counter is to move the money before the system gets to it. Automate it if possible. Make the friction work in the other direction for once. The invisible millionaire isn't a mythical figure. They're probably someone you've met and didn't think twice about. Unremarkable car, normal house, no strong opinions about their portfolio at dinner. Just quietly, steadily, building something nobody can see yet. The question worth sitting with isn't whether you admire that. It's whether the way you're spending right now is moving you toward it or away from it.